Remonda, great to see you, and thank you for joining me today on Fin Spotlight. Great to have you with us. Remonda is the co-founder and CEO of Muinmos. She's also the co-author of the RegTech book, which is, it's great. It's not every day you actually get to talk about RegTech with the person who actually wrote the book. So great to have you with us, Remonda. Maybe to kick us off, for those people who don't know Muinmos, could you just give us maybe a 30-second intro to what you guys do and a bit of background about Muinmos?
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt, for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. We founded the company in 2012, pretty much in the early days of RegTech, almost before the concept was actually invented in the financial service sector. One of the core reasons for founding the company was actually to alleviate the headache and the stress caused to financial institutions when they're onboarding clients, in particular from around the world. The complexity around regulation and the volume, if you like, of requirements that are needed by a financial institution to clear in order for them to actually onboard a client from country X and Y to trade a particular product in a particular service with them has just become a minefield. So one of the core founding reasons for Muinmos actually is to alleviate the headache and make the process much more exciting, much more interesting, and of course compliant for the financial institutions. And that's what we have achieved so far to date.
So all about the onboarding side of things, and I think you just touched on it there, that founded in 2012. I'd love to go sort of back, maybe to start with actually, and just understand kind of what you were doing in your career as well, to kind of what opportunity did you see at the time, and what role were you doing where you spotted kind of like, oh, there could be a bit of a challenge here, a problem here that we could solve, and give us a bit of a idea about how Muinmos came about.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I've been in the sector almost 20 years now, and I've seen this really from the early days when a lot of people today are focusing on the KYC AML space. Even 20 years ago, a lot of financial institutions, the way they were actually onboarding their clients was through almost Googling them to find out whether these clients can actually be onboarded or not. We can laugh at that today, but that actually was, unfortunately, if you like, a fact. During my career, almost for all these years prior to even founding Muinmos, both in my times at Saxo Bank and also CFH, where I was a co-founder, the complexity has become absolutely phenomenal in terms of trying to figure out, can you onboard a client from this country? What can you do with them? What can you do in terms of marketing? What products can you offer them? And that goes way beyond the KYC AML application. And that's something definitely we saw a huge gap in the market when we founded the company in 2012. And definitely today our clients that are utilizing our platform can see that the process from the initiation of taking on, if you like, a lead applicant to actually onboarding them has just gone to a completely different level through our offering.
So kind of touching upon there, not just the sort of KYC and AML elements, which I know we'll come on to because it's a core, key part of your product suite as well, but that suitability and are we okay to do this product with this type of client in this jurisdiction? Sort of maybe sort of jumping forward a little bit, but how complex a solution has that been as well to try to solve, given the sort of the various complexities that do exist globally there?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge, Matt. The complexity is enormous, and having lawyers do this by utilizing some form of checklist and figuring out what's happening in country X and Y is just simply not possible using basically the human mind to do this and navigate through the complexity of global regulation. And we have to also appreciate that the level of obviously regulatory frameworks are controlled by the local countries. You can't say what works, for example, in the United Kingdom is going to work in France even, or even in, and then go beyond that to third countries, like, for example, Australia, New Zealand, China, America, you name it. The complexity gets even bigger. And that's actually something we witnessed for sure under Brexit. A lot of people were very surprised that all of a sudden the UK was treated as a third country and vice versa, and they simply didn't know how to navigate across that framework, which, to be frank, has been around for many years. And it's becoming much more of a topic to a lot of local regulators. How do we control our country? How do we protect our local investors? And what do we do when we have financial institutions that are taking on clients from our jurisdictions without a regulatory license, without permission, without even exemption, or even some memorandums of understandings between the two countries, or three, if you want to add more to the complexity.
And you know, you talked about 20 years ago how people were doing this, but typically even today, what do you see clients, how are they when they're not using solutions like yours, how are they actually navigating this landscape today still? What's the method that they're doing?
They have large departments, large teams of lawyers. They definitely seek out legal opinions cross-border. A lot of the larger institutions that have been hit by fines or are very worried about getting fined, and potentially in many cases, Matt, they have their transactions actually reversed. And of course, you're also leaving a lot of investors without protection. If you're onboarding them without due regard to your own regulatory framework. So there's no shred of doubt that the level of complexity today has gone very far. And if they even hiring large departments, it doesn't solve the issue. The navigation through the listed framework cross-border is enormous, and you do really need machines to be able to do this instantly. The human mind can't do that, and even if it can, you're having to keep track of every single piece of framework that's ever changing all the time. It's really not that possible, actually, Matt, without thousands really of people and having lawyers cross-border handing out you changes on a regular basis. It's quite a complex minefield.
So Remonda, how clear were you when you first started, when you set up the company, how clear were you on what the solution needed to be here? How clear were you on what the problem was? And how much has that kind of evolved over time as well?
Yeah, I was very clear, actually, Matt. I was very clear in terms of knowing that this is a real issue, because we experienced it firsthand, for sure. During my many years in Saxo, heading also the legal team, and for sure in CFH, where I was also a co-founder, there was no doubt in my mind that this needed to go into a form of a platform in order to actually allow the institutions to navigate and build in their own policies, still allowing them to actually have full control and full visibility and transparency in the entire process. So really the platform was born to enable them, to empower them, to make them actually better lawyers, better compliance officers. And there's no shred of in my mind that the journey even then in 2012 was absolutely driven by that need, which has continued ever since. I would say in terms of has anything changed? I would probably say that yes, we did start initially by focusing on the regulatory side. You mentioned suitability at one point of the products of services, cross-border business. How can you actually take on clients from another jurisdiction, and what are the implications? And of course, can you offer them all products, or are there limitations, and so forth? This was one of the core founding principles of Muinmos, actually, because nobody has done that. Where we have seen a lot of, if you like, in 2012, a lot of companies coming out and reinventing the way KYC AML was viewed. There were definitely a traction beginning in that type of servicing. But for sure, we decided to do it the other way. We decided to actually do what the market doesn't have, and then join forces with fantastic providers to actually streamline the KYC AML offering. So this was planned.
So you very much started with that side of things first. So the sort of the check on whether you can trade this product with this client in this jurisdiction. You started with that problem
Absolutely.
First, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And as you said there, you then evolved your product set to include the KYC and AML check, which I know is obviously is a big area as well. How have you what have been some of the big challenges that you found across those as you've developed those solutions as well, just in terms of talked about the breadth of the problem there, and at the moment people are using armies of people potentially to solve this, or expensive lawyers.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges for you guys in terms of pulling this landscape together? And I guess it may be still some of the challenges of doing that as well.
Yeah, the complexity that lies behind the engine is enormous, Matt. And as you can imagine, the level of training we do to the machines, and to actually try to figure out how the specking interacts with one country over the other, is phenomenal. But of course, this is why the company has been founded, and the challenge we knew from day one. This is not just a small project. This is an enormous project. In fact, in the early days when I founded the company, I had a very, very bright engineer that works in the pharma sector, and he saw the first drawings, if you like, on the wall. And he said, Remonda, this is insane. This is not a small project. And I smiled and I said, the company was never founded to deliver a small project. So yes, the complexity is enormous, Matt, and there's always going to be challenges there. But that's where the machines come into play, and they aid the if you like, the systematic growth of the offering, and of course adding more jurisdictions all the time, and enabling also more and more laws to be, if you like, drafted with due regard to the implications they might have on the market and on the investors as well. So it's a phenomenal project. We absolutely love what we do, and that definitely will keep us going for many, many years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we haven't kind of dived into it yet, but you're talking about how the machines are working and how you're using AI, and I think people, this obviously become a hot topic over probably really the last 5 years, but really interesting to hear a little bit about how you guys are applying AI, machine learning, and other techniques like that to your process, and how you're leveraging those. Could maybe you just give a bit of insight about how you're using those technologies?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Matt, a lot of people are using the word, in many contexts, and AI requires enormous amounts of data. This is what we have been doing for the past many, many years, almost a decade now, is gathering volume data, training the machine to automatically collect it, and to actually analyze it, and to figure out how it sits in the equation of client onboarding. If you dismiss KYC, AML from that, and just focus on the actual regulatory parts, each jurisdiction has its own laws, each jurisdiction has its own requirements, and of course you start seeing patterns emerge, and this has been something that we worked on for the first many, many years, to actually have literally thousands and thousands of legislative frameworks in all sorts of languages that started actually where we framed the connectivities, and then have the machines collect the data and start putting it in the relevant, let's call them boxes, and then to actually streamline that into the modules of the platform to allow the financial institution to constantly onboard its clients, knowing it's compliant all the time. This requires enormous amounts of data and enormous amounts of figuring out the complexity, and then showing the machine exactly what you needed to do. So in effect, replicating what a human would do in these situations. And that's a lot of work, and will continue to be. We will never come to an end there, Matt. It's an ever, when technology is getting more and more sophisticated all the time, and that part is definitely a huge investment that's coming into the market from many different segments and sectors as well, globally.
And presumably, there's the complexity of not only that laws are drafted in different ways, but languages, they're drafted in different languages.
Exactly, gray areas as well. How do you determine them? What do you do with them? Where do you place them? And how do you basically come to a conclusion on them? There are many of these pockets of complexities that also lie in the journey. We like to call it client onboarding. Client onboarding is not a straightforward phenomenon. It's not just making sure that you're taking on a client that has a clean record and so forth. There's enormous amounts that lies behind when you onboard a client actually, and what do you do post the onboarding stage as well.
100%. And those solutions that you've developed, obviously there's there's a huge amount of complexity that we're talking about under the hood here. But the reality is, you're trying to also then give a very simple answer at the front end in a very quick amount of time. So
Yeah.
I know you sort of what you're aiming to do from a user experience perspective is to be able to give that answer almost instantaneously about whether they can proceed with this client. Is that
Exactly,
is that fair?
absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And that's exactly what very well developed solutions should do, Matt. Gathering the data and presenting it, that's one part of the project. And we never actually sold the initial, if you like, stages of the company's profiling in those days. We wanted to reach a stage of allowing the financial institution to receive a decision. Ultimately, they control that decision, but it's based on facts. It's based on actual, real, documented facts before they get to a final decision. There are many RegTechs out there today that are in the gathering stage of the data. They're not ready, and they may not be ready to ever reach a final conclusive decision. And that's a choice. Our choice was to truly help the financial institutions all the way through the process by also allowing them stops in between, to allow them also control, to allow them basically, if you like, a steering wheel in this self-driven car, to let them also make sure that the engine is doing what they would also like it to do, taking into account also the legislative frameworks that are operating under that particular transaction.
I mean, this interesting thing you said there is like, giving people the kind of the tools and the configurability to make either quite automated decisions or put those kind of gaps in there to control how that decision is made and maybe have some humans in the loop. What kind of decision or what kind of configuration there or choices do you give people along the way?
We have split our modules very clearly. So we actually have a module called mPASS, which allows a financial institution to utilize it for knowing exactly whether they can onboard a client from this country, what type of products can they offer them and services, what is their categorization in those countries as well, and is the product suitable and appropriate for them depending on the basically product and service that they have been offered. There they can go in, they can almost, even if they're allowed by license to do business with a client segment, they can actually say, we know we're allowed, we don't want to do it. Of course, they would have to justify to their regulator at one point, if they have a permission that they're not using, why aren't they using it, and should it actually go in that case? And I know the UKFCA is heavily focusing on that right now. The same, then we have another module with the mCHECK, which is the KYC AML, and again, they can tailor specifically their needs to the country, to the types of documents they want, to the types of sanctions they want, to the types of PEP levels they want to pull out, to the level of adverse media they want to be able to gather. And then we end with the MRX, which is our risk profiling on the client, which actually automatically populates everything from the other modules if they're being utilized to generate a very final risk profile on the client that's been onboarded for the institution. In that, again, there are heavy configurations for the institution to be able to actually either use a default or go in and segment every part of their risk profiling on the client to what they desire that to be.
I mean, I think what you've got there is almost I think what you would consider a complete onboarding solution. And what kind of clients does it really fit well with the types of solutions you developed? Often these things do develop with certain types of clients and fit their workflows and other things better. What type of clients really work well for Muinmos?
We onboard many financial institutions, to be honest, Matt, of all sizes. The small, obviously, there's no shred of doubt. They see the opportunity there. They don't have the resources to be able to handle any of this. And it's a no-brainer for them. It's definitely a fantastic offering. The larger ones, for sure, they can see that the modules are very, very attractive for them to take, whether as a whole or separate. And then, of course, we have a lot also of asset managers, hedge funds as well. And we're getting a lot of interest now from the banks as well. That's a much slower sell, if I'm to put it.
Yeah. I think that's generally the way with the larger
Exactly.
institutions.
Exactly.
So how do you? I mean, I think we've touched on this, but I'd love to hear if there's anything else to pull out here. But in terms of the way that you guys have tackled the problem differently to others, what do you think are those kind of key differences that you see from your products that compared to others?
I think our focus, Matt, is we want to do and continue to do what we are good at. As a team, we've been in the sector. I'm probably the youngest with almost 20 years. The rest of my team have phenomenal experience behind them. And we want to focus on what we are truly good at. And this is exactly what we're doing, is what we are good at. We don't want to diverge into other offerings that we have some clients asking us, do you offer this, do you offer that? It's a fantastic addition to your offering. Absolutely, it might well be. We rather than introduce them to some of the fantastic RegTechs out there that do that very well. And that's one of the probably differences, I would say, between us and maybe some of the others is we are focusing on what we are, what the company was born to do, Matt, and that's what we will continue to focus doing also in the future as well.
I think you've got a problem which is deep enough to
exactly
to keep you busy.
Plenty for many years.
Absolutely. I mean, you touched on your KYC and AML solution and touched on, again, thinking about the way you guys, what you're trying to achieve here, which is, fast onboarding with all the information at hand. There's a whole different problem there of gathering data, which you touched on earlier as well. How do you guys, through partnerships, other data sources, help to solve that sort of problem? And how much of that do you do yourself versus partner up as well?
Yeah, the modules are everything in our modules is proprietary. Where we work with partners is on some of the data sources in terms of, for example, if we're extracting data, PEP, sanction, adverse media, etc. We work with many different providers out there, and each provider, Matt, has very unique skills and very unique offerings in terms of also their jurisdictional covering. There's no single AML provider, maybe that's the wrong word to use, AML provider. There's no single source that does this very well across the board. They actually do it well for unique sets of data. And that's one of the biggest advantages in our engine is we want to work with the best providers out there of these sources and to make sure we cater for our clients' needs based also on their jurisdiction. And that's actually one of the biggest differentiators than just going out and sourcing that data. Gathering some of this data is not complicated. It makes no sense for us to go and gather it when somebody else has actually done it and sampled it and can determine, with certainty that we're good in this jurisdiction, we're bad in this country, for example. And that's where we really truly find some fantastic partnerships. Honesty is key in this sector, I would say, Matt.
And I think one of the challenges people do have with data is just trying to understand where those different providers are good in different regions and where they have good access.
Exactly.
Or maybe they've got secondary data.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you're doing is fantastic on this front to hopefully be able to provide to the market much clearer picture of what's out there and what's good in each country.
Absolutely. So, I mean, touching on some of the, we're just talking about KYC and AML there, maybe continue there, but just what are some of the main challenges that you see that the clients do have around with completing these checks quickly, efficiently, in kind of a risk, with the risk hat on as well? What are some of the biggest challenges from your point of view for your clients?
In terms of our clients utilizing our offering, whether as a standalone platform or API, it actually gives them a very clear picture, Matt. So I would say that probably they're not challenged in terms of the complexity in the engine is obviously very streamlined for them. So it's very easy for them to understand what they need to do and tick all their boxes, whether it's for an internal audit department or an external regulator that's coming into the picture. I think I would say one of the biggest challenges with the market in general is a lot of financial institutions, if we're to focus on that, they go out expecting a provider to give them a solution for everything. And I would say that there's no shred of doubt that working together, all of us in this space, will definitely pave the way for allowing those financial institutions better coverage, much more connected coverage under single APIs rather than having to integrate to many, whether they go through an API integration or even a standalone platform. No one today wants to open up 5 portals in the morning to be able to onboard a client, Matt. That's these days are over. To be very frank with you. So that's what we're trying to also achieve in our mCHECK module, is to truly help our clients navigate through that, give them one platform that they connect to at all times, whether through APIs or standalone, and to actually ease their pain that everything is there and everything that's there works for them.
I think you touched on exactly why we've set up the FinTech Innovation Network as well, really, is because it's become far more of a, look, no one provider can do everything here. No. It's an ecosystem of vendors and maybe internal systems as well that you're going to be using to solve these challenges. And it's really about trying to, how do you piece these things together to get the right solution. And I think from your point of view, what you guys are providing very clearly is the sort of technology layer to that, but from the KYC and AML perspective, you're just working with data providers, and I presume you're very agnostic to
very
and bringing that information into to help solve that problem, right?
Exactly.
So you probably, in setting up in 2012, you're almost, as you said there, kind of before RegTech was really a thing. How have you seen the sort of RegTech community and RegTech, domain really develop over those years? And I guess where do you see it sort of going over the next couple of years as well?
Yeah, I definitely can confirm, Matt, we were early. there's no shred of doubt about that. We were definitely very early. In those days, we knew the R&D was going to take many years. That wasn't, if you like, something we didn't anticipate. We for sure anticipated that. But I would say that the market wasn't even ready a few years even into our platform. There was still very much, we can't outsource. No, we need to do this ourselves. No, we have a team of, hundreds of people in some of the larger institutions, and we're happy doing it our way. And I think what a lot of the institutions, including the banks, have realized over the years, in particular the past few years, Matt, and more so, unfortunately, with COVID, is they actually realize that this is madness. I mean, the financial institutions, a lot of them these days, they have a huge division of lawyers, compliance officers that are spending a lot of time on these areas, and their teams are ever growing, and the complexity is not getting less. And unfortunately, neither the fines are getting smaller across the globe. So I would definitely say that there's been a huge growth. There's been more acquisition in terms of, yes, we need help. And I would say the future, in the way I view it, is most likely, and I have pushed that topic a little bit, that probably a lot of RegTechs that are doing what we're doing will probably go under a regulatory framework themselves. We probably could get at one point a license, which will enable a lot of these financial institutions to lean on us, to actually outsource with confidence and comfortably, feeling that there is actually a framework that's governing what we are doing. And at the same time, there is, a license to say we're regulated by X regulator, and we are here to do what we are delivering to you. And you can lean on us for that support.
Oh, I mean, I know this is a topic which is, you've talked about before, and what do you think that regulation of a RegTech would look like then? Because it obviously is, it would be reasonably different, I think, to a financial, a financial institution. How would you see a RegTech and regulation of a RegTech look like?
I think the way probably I would view it, Matt, is I don't know. Of course, we've had that topic as well. Is our RegTechs only in the financial space? Absolutely not.
Of course, yeah.
We're in many different segments in that sense and sectors. So I think there's probably going to be a framework at one point. Is who are we servicing? Who should actually be controlling and doing the oversight of that, and how should that look like? And in the UK, actually under the FCA umbrella, the ones that are handling, for example, complaints, there is actually a separate license for those type of, if you like, companies where they can get a license to actually operate under that frame. And I see actually some RegTechs falling somewhat under similar structures to these type of complaints companies that need to have obviously the right frameworks, the right protection, the right systems, the right controls, the right leadership teams. No different really from a financial institution, of course, in a different manner. And I see that potentially having some sort of umbrella extension from that towards companies like us. And this will give the comfort also to a lot of the institutions out there that this segment is actually a good segment. It's there to empower you, it's there to help you. And ESMA has, in fact, last summer, Matt, put even guidelines out to say that compliance legal function should have actually a budget for technology, whether that's outsourced or not. They definitely need to have a budget to actually lean more towards technology to aid and help them in this process. Simply humans can't do this without, to be frank.
Yeah, and I think I think that's right. And I think, in relative terms, the RegTech as a is still an immature kind of market, and that might be as the market matures, and as well, it'd be interesting to see where, if you're talking about regulation of RegTechs, which RegTechs really need to be, I think RegTech has been used fairly broadly, but which RegTechs really need to be regulated versus which don't, right? Which falls into the categories of possibly needing that versus those who do it maybe more of a task.
Today to financial institutions, right? So where they fall under many categories. Years ago, a lot of the typical brokers that we see today also didn't really have a clear governing framework either. With time, things had to change. We can also open up the discussion about the crypto world as well. How is that moving in terms of regulatory frameworks as well? This is no different. So I think with time, definitely we will see a change. Absolutely. And I personally welcome it.
Have you, I mean, you mentioned it, as you said, like you guys were almost so early, you were almost a little bit before people were willing to, I don't want to really use the word outsource, but outsource this kind of, some of this decision making, or the technology, at least, moving it from human decisions to technology and an outsourced vendor. Have you seen, where do you think was the sort of tipping point? Do you think, I think we can all recognize there's been an acceleration of the digital transformation in general in this space. Do you feel like COVID has almost been that tipping point, or do you think it maybe sort of we were on the cusp anyway?
To be honest, Matt, I would say COVID has definitely pushed it much more. It already started a little bit prior to that. And we've seen a lot of regulators, as I'm sure you'll be very familiar with all the sandboxes that came about prior to COVID. But there's no doubt that the push came really from COVID, where we can see a lot of institutions, they're struggling with home working, they're struggling with data protection, they're struggling with how do we handle this when we can't sit together around the table. They're also struggling with different technologies, even in their own institution. I would definitely say it definitely pushed it, absolutely. But prior to that, there's definitely been a push by the authorities as well, that we need more technology to come into play here.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago that you would go to a conference or had talked to technologists in-house at a financial institution, and they sort of would scorn at the idea of ever moving their systems to the cloud. And I think that's been another good example where attitudes have changed pretty quickly, really. We could look at sort of 3 or 4 years. I mean, what from where you guys sit today, and I think we were just chatting before this, but very busy times. What do you see as the next few years for Muinmos, and where do you see your sort of growth of your solutions, or of the company in general? What's your sort of plans for the future?
Yeah, we're very excited about pretty much moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, gaining traction in at least our part of the world, and of course, in a clear manner, move towards other jurisdictions as well. The beauty of our platform, actually, Matt, is it's global. It allows for catering, absolutely for cross-border business, and it literally flips depending where the institution is, whether they're here in Denmark, or you're in your part of the world in the UK or China or whatever. And that's actually very, very powerful. But for us, it makes sense to conquer each country one by one, and then hopefully we will have learnings as well from that, and benefit our clients significantly through our movement.
And what are some of those big? What are some of those big countries on the list of the next jurisdictions you guys are moving into?
We definitely can see a huge traction in Asia. We actually have some strong partnerships in Singapore, and we're moving beyond that as well. We're also gaining a lot of traction in the US market and Canada. And for sure, Europe is huge in terms of opportunities, and we can definitely see that our platform and offering can truly eliminate the headache for a lot of these institutions almost around the world, Matt. But we will take it one step at a time.
And I know. You guys, I believe, take a bit of a different approach in the fact that you guys have grown through organic growth without sort of going to, equity houses and trying to get investment. That must be a sort of different challenge, and be quite different as well to the rest of others in the market. I suppose. I won't necessarily ask about all the challenges with growing in an organic way, but how does I suppose how do you kind of look at the idea of investment versus growing organic, and keeping that control as well, I guess, as a huge, I guess, motivator to not going outside?
Yeah, we're heavily driven by technology. As I mentioned, when the company was founded, we truly believe that a lot of stuff can be handled through technology. It just means that we work differently, actually, Matt. For sure, every RegTech, every company works hard, and there's no doubt we work exceptionally hard, but we also try to dive a lot of the stuff through technology. Hiring people is one thing. We hire them because there's a need for them, Matt, and also because we really truly want our team collectively to be absolutely challenged all the way from the day they join the company to the day they hopefully never leave, but even if they do, they feel that there's a challenge all the time. So we try to drive a lot of it through technology, and that's one of the reasons why we were able to probably take it as far as we have today without actually needing the thousands of people that a lot of RegTechs have raised and hired at the same time.
Absolutely. And I wanted to just ask kind of one other question, because obviously you're based in Denmark, and how is the sort of RegTech and FinTech, maybe more broadly, kind of community grown there? And again, maybe just touch on what do you see a sort of blossoming kind of ecosystem there as well now developing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Denmark in general is at the forefront of technology, and we've seen many amazing companies come out of Denmark on that front. And there's no doubt that the quality of also technology in Denmark and probably Scandinavia is at a very, very high level. So for us, actually, we can see there's huge growth in the country. There's becoming more and more also, if you like, the regulators are beginning to form much more coherent sandboxes as well, and working with the market. And we have also the Copenhagen FinTech lab as well, where there are lots of new comers into the market that have definitely exciting offering, and hopefully a very bright future as well.
Brilliant. Look, time has absolutely flown by. So I think we'll need to stop there, Remonda. And I'll just say, look, thank you very much for joining me today and being so open about the journey you guys have been on as well, and getting your thoughts on RegTech and the wider industry. You've been really interesting. Thank you. Good luck in the future.
Pleasure.
And wish you every success and look forward to the next time. No doubt.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Matt. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.